Welcome to Story Comic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 409. I'm your host, Barney Smith of StoryComic.com, and we're excited to have with us the internationally acclaimed and talented creators of Box of Tapes, a rock opera, Ezra Gale and Patrick Lugo. Hey.
Yeah.
How's it going, Patrick? Hey, Ezra.
Pausing for applause.
Yeah.
See, that's right. Yeah. Insert applause here. There you go.
Just letting it wash over.
Yeah.
So.
And so we mentioned before we started recording that, Patrick, this is your third time. So all of our listeners and viewers who know the show know that if you're on three times, you get the moniker friend of the show. So congratulations, Patrick. You'll get the T-shirt and the award and all that stuff being sent to you imminently. So then you'll get those. Okay.
I'm very much looking forward to that swag bag, Barney. And thank you for that. And thank you for having us. It's
absolutely.
It's such an exciting mission to get here, and I'm particularly excited to introduce.
I've got to document this.
Yeah. I mean, otherwise, what we say just wouldn't even matter.
It's this is good B-roll stuff. See, so Patrick, this is your third time on the show, which means you officially get the moniker friend of the show now. So
I've been so excited to hear those words.
Two more times, you get friend of the show status.
I am going to schedule it in.
I mean, just knowing like the quality of company that phrase puts me in.
See, I know. Yeah. I mean, and all you have to do, I'll send you the PNG logo that says friend of the show, and feel free to stick it on, your car or all of your projects, and just put it on there. So it'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll find some fun things to do with it.
Turn them into urinal cakes or something.
Right.
Throwing stars.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. And Patrick, you're still in Northern California. No,
yes.
Washington.
Northern California, San Francisco Bay Area.
That's what it was, yeah.
Where I won't brag, but it's warmer now in December than it was in November. So
see?
Yeah, I remember that. I lived out there for a while. That's actually where I met Patrick in person. Well,
really?
We were both in the Bay Area, yeah. And I do remember it just being sunny in December. So kind of do miss that.
There was. Well, do you guys remember that Baz Luhrmann came out with that free to wear sunscreen? It was that spoken word that came out in 1999. Do you remember that? It was a spoken word thing that it was like top 40. It basically says, "Ladies and gentlemen of the class of '99, wear sunscreen." It was kind of like it was a graduation speech. That was actually he didn't produce it. It was actually in a local newspaper, and then he turned it into like a spoken word piece. But anyway, it reminds me is that there was a line in there that says, "Live in Northern California once, but leave before it makes you soft. Live in New York City once, but leave before it makes you hard." So that was kind of like one of those lines in there.
Right.
I remember that line. That line sticks out to me, but
yeah, that was from that. But. All right, Ezra and Patrick, let me get the intro in, and then we'll jump right into it. So.
All right.
I got a new webcam. Supposedly, it's supposed to be super cool, but what happened was it defaulted all my mics. So I have to physically always make sure my mic is coming from here,
right,
and not from there.
Right.
So yeah, but I tested it beforehand, so I should sound good. So all right. You guys ready?
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
I mean, one key thing was that Ezra didn't mention is that he assembled a cast, right? Like, it's not just, original songs, but the characters, specific singers singing the roles of the different characters involved in the story. So it's not really a post-apocalyptic story, but it's kind of slightly it's got a slight dystopian edge, which you can see in that panel, but it's about a teenager who is trying to learn about his missing mother, right? And he's doing this through this box of tapes that he's discovered. So it's kind of the story is happening on two timelines, with our artist Luis illustrating the present day events, and then I get to illustrate I call them musical sequences, although the whole thing is a musical. It's like the music video event when he presses play on that tape and he gets a sort of vision of his missing mother, right? His long lost mom. And it's each song is putting together a puzzle of this, a more whole person, right? He's got this idealized vision of his mom, and each song adds a clue to the truth behind her choices, right? And some of those choices plot out like a gradual radicalization that she experiences, which is one of the reasons why she goes missing.
Right. And so what is it about? Because this takes place in the 80s, right? Would this series take place?
It's not really clear, really. I mean,
right.
As Patrick said, the story is the teenager lives with his dad, and they kind of get in a fight, and he runs up to the attic and discovers this box of tapes. And then he starts playing them. He discovers their songs by his mom and dad. So clearly they're cassettes from back, some years before when they recorded them. Although, as we find out as the story progresses, the mom was a pretty radical anti-technology zealot, Luddite, so maybe she was just using cassettes. So it's not really clear when it happens, but the present day is, 15, 16 years or so after what happens in the past, which is the part of the story that Patrick draws that is on the cassette tapes that he's listening to. So, it could be the 80s and then the late 90s and O's, or, it could be nowadays. It's not super defined like that.
Well, this is the thing, right? This is one of the, let's call them theatrical liberties that we're taking with this project, right? Because if you think of like, your classic plays, right? Shakespeare, let's say, I'm not going to compare us to Shakespeare, but let's just use that example. Hamlet can take place during the Viking era, can take place during, medieval times, could take place, in a 1980s boardroom, but the truths in that story remain the same. So I think this is one of the reasons why I was really interested in this project, because I think Ezra is playing to that same tune when he's trying to set it in kind of an idealized space. It's not post-apocalyptic, but it's got some of those elements in there, such as the lack of power in a city, right? But that's not too removed from current headlines either. So in that same way, like he's using tapes to kind of set, because people hardly use them now, it's kind of plays with that like object that's sitting outside of time, and this story kind of sits outside of time in a bunch of ways, so hopefully by doing that it can be a little bit more relevant. But that's also like what I'm trying to bring to the pages that I drew based on the songs that I was hearing, right? So it's like the world building was a little bit organic in that sense.
Yeah. And so basically then, correct me if I'm wrong, Ezra, but then this is also like I want to get the phraseology right. It's a concept album then, right?
Yeah. I mean, concept album. I mean, I would call it a real rock opera because we have different singers singing the different characters. There's I sing the songs by the dad. We have Jessica Jelliff singing the songs of the mom, and then Forrest Van Dyke, he's in The Lion King, amazing singer. He sings the teen, and then another character, Christian Gibbs, sings the role of Ned, who's this kind of old radical that knew mom way years ago. So yes, concept album, rock opera. People have different definitions. My own like nerdy definition is that a rock opera has like different voices for the different parts, and the different character. Like Jesus Christ Superstar has, it's not one guy singing the whole thing. Whereas Queensryche is going to be like the same guy singing every song. So like
or like a Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon would be a concept album.
Right. Or, or the Wall even really is a concept album, because it's all one singer, whatever, like that's kind of,
okay.
I don't know if that's the official definition, but to me, yes, there's a through line. There's definitely the same story that goes through it. And the significance to me of the cassettes was not really as a time period, but it was more a symbol of the mom's kind of anti-technology bent. And because in a lot of her songs that we discover from her story, she's kind of like preaching to her kid and to everybody, like, hey, put down your phones, like pay attention to me, pay attention to the world. The mystery is delicious, like soak it up around you. So the cassettes really kind of symbolized her wanting to go back to that more analog world. And so who knows, she might have been, that part of the story might have happened like nowadays, and she just made a point of living, putting her art on cassette or whatever. So that's kind of, that was, to me, that was the symbolism of that.
Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. And thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. So would you say box of tapes, is this for musicians or people who listen to music to kind of get themselves bridged into the comic book anthology world, or just people for the comic that are coming from a comic book world to start understanding more about, say, rock operas? Because it's, as Venn diagrams go, isn't a big overlap. There is. I'm sure there are people that like rock operas and anthology comics, but it's, so who'd you say the audience is for this? It's not for that small sliver. It's got to be for.
I think it could be a gateway drug in either direction. I think it could be like, wow, I've never thought about an album that was all one story, and I got to go listen to the Who. Like it could be like that, and it could be somebody who's like, I never thought a comic could tell the same story as music or whatever. Or, this is really cool. I mean, that would be great. I would love that. I mean, I personally love both of those things. So I don't think I'm the only person in the world like that. I think there's a handful of us. So I've still got my old comics and whatever. I'm always once in future comic book nerd, and musician also. So I hope there's other people that appreciate it. I mean, I do think, since it's a graphic novel, and because nowadays, like, I mean, when I was growing up in high school and just first getting into comics, it was like, it wasn't a thing that I wasn't like waving my X-Men comics around the high school halls, because it was the kind of thing that we kind of kept secret, like me and my friends would get together, but like, I didn't want any of the girls to know that I was like into comic books. That's for sure. I think nowadays, and maybe it's a little different. I mean, graphic novels are much more like, they're mainstream, or just acceptable, or just like everybody kind of acknowledges, like, oh, this is an art form, which is great. I mean, I'm glad that happened, but so I hope it's not like, I think that it's that battle's been won, like everybody's kind of accepted that, like, oh yeah, this is a legitimate way to tell a story now, through the comic art form. We call it a graphic novel, and so hopefully we don't have to like win people over on that front. But
I would say it's a teen character, so we can definitely describe this as a young adult graphic novel. So I would say it's for the precocious music student, right? But at the same time, it's for the hipster parent who wants to add to their LP collection. So we're kind of playing with the form. We did produce it. We're also producing it as cassette tapes, but we're also, in the same way, we're going to do a digital download of the music, and as well as the comic. But parents don't want their kids, the parents are looking for a way to minimize screen time. So we're kind of trying to present this as an option, for that kid who might be second guessing their ukulele classes You know, they could read this and kind of get a sense of, oh, look at the possibilities. Look at how these things could be mashed together. And I didn't, I never thought that I could team up with my other bandmates and we could maybe make a comic as well. So we're trying to like plant our flag in a space of like these new mashups and cross media kind of projects,
right?
While also kind of raising that flag for analog media, like stepping away from the digital.
Is it in a way almost like the graphic novel is a companion piece to the music, and is the music like a soundtrack to the graphic novel?
Yeah, I think I like to think of it that way. I like to think that it can go either way. I mean,
Right.
it was conceived. Certainly, I wrote the songs before the graphic novel existed. Obviously, so like for me, the music came first, like the concept of that. But as we've been working on it, I really, in my mind, they go together. As kind of like it could be one or the other. Like, and um, I hope that they each of them stand alone if if needed. I hope you can pick up the book. I mean, the art is incredible from Patrick and Louise. It's just like my eyes are bugging out of my head every time when we're working on this and these guys are sending me pages and we're going back and forth. I'm just like amazed at the quality. So I think that you can certainly pick the book up and just read it as a story, as a graphic novel, and I think it'll make sense because it's a pretty easy to follow story, I think.
Right.
And then likewise, I think you can put the album on and listen to it, and you necessarily have to follow along as you're listening. But that's one of the really intriguing things to me just about this process is kind of having the listener or reader be a little more interactive, not like less passive. It's not just like, here, I'm just going to like bombard you with these images and you just sit there and like, watch this movie or let's say take in this album. It's like, no, you have to kind of choose, how do you want to experience this? Do you want to put your headphones on and listen to it? Do you want to, get your book out and or do you just want to read the comic? You're like, all that's fine. All that's good. I hope it works on all those levels.
Right. I love the idea too. I love that sense of irony where it's about kind of like, as you mentioned, there's Luddite theme to it, but
Yeah.
you also are able to download it and listen to it digitally.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in a perfect world, I would like only offer it on cassette. But I mean, I actually want somebody to listen to this. So
right. It's like you have like there's just a voiceover of the mother like, you disgust me. Why would you download this?
If you play the MP3 backwards, then you get that part.
Yeah, then you get the mom just like shaking her, just like tisk tisk,
But one thing, in thinking about your question, Barney, it reminded me that I just watched the trailer for the new Disney Snow White live action remake of the animated feature, which was an adaptation of a Brothers Grimm story published hundreds of years before, which was also local folklore before it was ever written down.
Right.
And so I think what we're trying to do is compress that timeline into one project, right? So it's kind of like about about technology and about that tension between what form a story gets communicated in. And the same way that the kid is learning these stories, right? And within the story, the kid is learning is being told stories through the songs he's listening to. At the same time, you can listen to those stories without the graphic novel, or you can look at how, rather than a stage production, it's a comic production. So you could see it and see what the visual equivalents are to some of those choices, right? Because, like in a stage production, that's not really like reality. It's a heightened reality. So the comic gives us that same chance to do that and really compress and press the form.
And like in the story behind it, when you think about it, because I recently rediscovered my old mixtapes. I'm playing them, and it's just, there's right now it's their legacy of things that are created where we are now, like on YouTube or as a pocket, that anybody can access this conversation at any time in the future. So there's something taken away, but there's that in your story, there's a sense of intimacy and legacy, is knowing that like those mixtapes are literally only in one place.
Mm-hmm.
There's a sense of there's a sense of honor and intimacy to the fact of knowing like I am the only one holding these tapes. Like and so there's a sense that and we see this also from with our age now, is that Gen Xers are firmly in middle age now, and give us another 5 years and we're going to be getting AARP, like spot like getting AARP memberships. That there's an idea of like looking at what our own legacy is going to be, like what our own legacy is like, because we have all of our childhood, if we're lucky, are in physical pictures, are in physical mixtapes, are in physical books. And we're that last generation that has actually like transitioned from the analog to the digital. And so we appreciate both. But there's a sense of there's a sense of these new generations of your not so much millennials, but it's like your Gen Zers and your Gen Alphas, which is like the newest generation, is where there's a nostalgia of a time that they never lived in that they want to revisit. I've been seeing cassettes, brand new cassettes of brand new albums are now for sale. Like I thought it was just going to be records. Like, what are your thoughts? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I actually I had I still have a cassette label called Very Special Recordings that put out when I was in Brooklyn, and we put out a bunch of Brooklyn bands. It's a small scene, but it's a scene, and I think a lot of the driving kind of force behind it is a lot of people who want to kind of stay off the internet, and like you just said, have this experience and this kind of like document that is only available like this, and you have to be present to experience it, and you can't, it's not like I mean, of course we're saying this live streaming on on a podcast that's going out, and it's going to be available, podcast number 409 of yours, which is I'm so happy about, but like so yeah, the irony is here. I'm aware of that, but I think that there is kind of that hunger for something that's a little bit more authentic, and that is part of the story in Box of Tapes is the journey of the mom character who went through this whole process that the teen discovers of through the story of kind of rejecting these kind of modern trappings and this digital lifestyle, and then as it turns out, reacting really violently against it, and like essentially taking up arms to kind of do away with that. And I think that was definitely a theme, and the reason for the cassette iconography and just the symbolic, the significance of them and of that in the story of kind of, so that's what we had to not only put it on cassette but also on record. I mean, it's just like it needed to exist in that form, that analog form, so that you can kind of touch it and hold it, and
Yeah, I should also say that, like, it wasn't just James Gunn who thought using tapes to create the emotional impact to tell a story. James Gunn wasn't the only one thinking about that. But I mean, I kind of also wanted to mention what you said about your mixtapes, right? Like, there's a story that you have that's unique to the context of how you acquired that mixtapes and what went on, and did you buy it while you were on a bus trip to a concert event or whatever, right? So in a homogenized society such as the one that we have now, like, those things are becoming more and more rare, especially for the generations as you've described them. So I think part of my thinking of like with crafting this story was to try and embed some of that with the visuals, so that the visuals that reflect the story could also reference other things, other stories, other works of arts. Maybe it's concert posters, Maybe it's a piece that you'll find in a museum or in an art history class, right? So in this way, I want someone who's listening and reading to kind of get this little trigger of like, huh, that reminds me of something. Why is that? And I like, it's that sense of, you know, there's something more beyond the edges of this project that I think we're trying to like infuse the project with. So like it almost like it's a brand new project that comes with its own nostalgia embedded in it. If we did it correctly.
Right.
And so is this the first project the two of you have worked on together?
Well, no, the last album, the Ear Goggle album that we did before this, the Ear Goggle Regales, the Ear Goggle Revels was a double album of songs, but that one was not a. Patrick did one of the songs on that, but that was not like a through story. That was just a regular album with different songs, and so the comic book for that was different artists who did each one, you know. Okay. So that was more anthology style. This one is like, you know, the same artists all the way through, same story and everything. So yeah, so that's that, and that, but that was a great experience. So I'm glad, you know, we did.
Well, it should also be said that right, Ezra mentioned that we know each other from his time in the Bay Area. That includes the local music scene where I have done posters and CD covers and album covers for in the past. And so when I had heard about this project through our mutual networks, right, we were already talking about what we wanted to achieve with Box of Tapes. And we realized that it was so ambitious that we should try and do a proof of concept first. And because Ezra is so prolific, he was like, oh, well, I'm about to release this album anyway, so maybe we should try something comics related with it just to see if people will be into it. And so then that was the germ of it. So Box of Tapes was still simmering and, you know, taking shape. And then Ezra just went out and just cast this wide net for artists from all over the world and was like, here, you have a song, you have a song, you have a song. And then we all just kind of started turning in pages, you know, right. So that was the initial. And then, you know, he was like, oh, well, while we're at it, Patrick, why don't you do the cover for that album?
That's right. Well? Yeah, he did. Yeah, Patrick did the album cover, which was amazing.
And so that was just like, hooray, you know, another, you know, for the longest time, doing album art was like a bucket list thing. As an artist, I want to do album art. But then CDs came out, and I was like, okay, I'll do CD covers. They're smaller, but okay.
Not as cool.
CDs came out, and I'm like, oh, who's gonna pay me to do a thumbnail? You know?
Yeah. I know. This is the cover that Patrick did. It's still.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's so great. This cover is so great. So this was our other, and then this was the book. You know.
Right. And if you look closely, right, the album cover is Ezra standing outside of a comic shop.
Yeah.
Or the personification of Ezra, the ear goggle, standing outside of a comic shop. So we were already kind of signaling that we're going to try and, you know, come back.
So for our listeners, you'll send a link to that image for our listeners that I could put on. Yeah. So my next question then, before we wrap up, is like those that might be listening to this a year from now or 2 years from now, and are watching this, is like, man, I wish I knew about Box of Tapes when it came out, and I missed the Kickstarter. Darn it! By golly, I wish I had that. How would somebody access or buy the album or the graphic novel?
It'll be on the band. I'll send the band. It's on the Bandcamp link, which is under the Ear Goggle, and all these albums will be there. And so, you know, once we actually have the records and the books and the cassettes and the CDs and everything and the downloads, that'll be on the Bandcamp.
But if I have my way, Barney, a couple of years from now, it'll be a coast-to-coast tour of the live performance of this rock opera, going from comic shop to comic shop.
Okay, see,
right? Like we, you know, I'll say it here: we made history, right? We were the first rock opera ever to be performed live in a comic shop, right? So
Yeah,
Lin-Manuel Miranda hasn't done that.
Yeah.
The Who never did that. Neither has Pink Floyd.
Yeah, I don't
You know,
think so. You know,
maybe Alan Moore did something like that, and so we'll have to check. But we did it once. It got us on the radio. It's a piece of comics history.
Yeah.
And so if I have my way, it'll be a coast to coast comic shop tour of the album, so that they could just go to their local comic shop, support the local comic shop, pick up the album, pick up the graphic novel, and have the live experience.
Be pretty great. We did that. That was one stunt we pulled during the Kickstarter, which was really a lot of fun. I put a band together, including the drummer who was on some of the album, and got some other great musicians. And we played a little mini set of the songs from the rock opera from a box of tapes in the local comic book shop here in Kingston, New York. World's End Comics. We set up in the back room, right? We had to move the tables where they have the D&D games, and then set the band up, and we rocked out. It was great. It was really great. So, so yes, Patrick's been plugging he's been pushing the coast to coast comic book shop tour, and I'm not against it. Gotta say, I think it would be
coming to a comic book convention near you.
Yeah, that'd be pretty good too.
All right, perfect.
Yeah.
So if people want to learn more about the two of you, where's the best place they could go to?
Well, for me, it's probably that Bandcamp page, the Ear Goggle Bandcamp. I got all my releases there, and there's links to a bunch of the other bands that I'm in and stuff like that. So,
okay.
And for me, plugoarts.com. That's where I update my blog, my comics journalism. That's where I post comics. That's where people can subscribe for my newsletter, where they get even more free comics and various essays. I like to nerd out on media and our relationship to it. So I've got a few think pieces at that website right now for anyone who wants to learn about the nature of profiling or profile and curating. Oh, here's the word, prophilicity.
Ooh, wow. Okay. That sounds like a statistical phenomenon.
It's philosophical nerdery, I'll say.
But it can be measured, what is your level of prolificity? I like it.
That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. And listen, Ezra, you're going to have to come back on at least 2 more times.
Two more times.
The show status.
I am 1/3 of a friend of the show. Right.
You guys haven't even talked about Ezra's excursions, with his various bands. I'll say Aphrodisia off the top of my head is one that's close to my heart. But he's got stories he can share with you, Barney. I'm certain you'll enjoy him.
Perfect.
Stories from late night and New Year's on the Pacific Ocean coast, maybe, or stories from West Africa. I've been all over. Got some stories all over.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, thank you. This has been great.
Okay, cool. All right. So very exciting. So we are, so what's next? If people, all right, I'm going to timestamp that. So that's what I love about doing it pre-recorded. I can always timestamp things and then make it sound like I'm asking all the great questions later.
Yeah, but this is key. This section,
Yeah,
you can't cut this out. The fumbling around and everything. That's
exactly
what people come for, That's real. That's real life.
That's really exciting.